Minasan, welcome back for another round of Warhammer research. I'm continuing on with the Tyranids, and my viewers, my fans, have been warning me that there aren't many character-specific stories on Tyranids. Specific Tyranid characters, mainly because they're primarily a hive mind. They're like the Borg, and yeah, it makes sense. Although my brain is sorely tempted to maybe write a story about a specific Tyranid, like a Moby Dick type of a story, but nah, I'm not gonna go there because I think about what happened in Star Trek regarding the Borg, because in the movie First Contact, the producers were like, yeah, the Borg are a very fantastic enemy, but you need a specific character for everyone to fight against, and thus the Borg Queen was born. And that sure didn't help much for the Borg from that point forward. If Voyager's anything to go by, anything to go by, and then later shows, like Picard and so on, with the way the Borg got written and treated and so on. It's that they completely forgot what made the Borg menacing. And that was that they were a collective, and there was no one specific antagonist or villain to target for them to fight. It took the teeth out of what was an extraordinarily menacing character, and the Tyranids is the same thing too. I don't believe it needs a specific character. We don't need to see the Tyranid Queen specifically, or any specific Moby Dick type Tyranid character. I think it makes good sense not to do that. They're already terrifying, and they should stay terrifying in a world where everybody is a baddie. In a world where there's just nothing but absolute hatred. There's the one creature that has no hatred. It's just eating. That's it. It's Bottomless Pete. He's he no man. He's a most eating machine. As the pirate captain from The Simpsons said when he owned that restaurant and Homer was just eating him out. He's like, that's no man. That's a merciless eating machine. He was like, come see Bottomless Pete, mankind's greatest mistake. The crowd's surrounded and watching Homer just eating everything. Advertising. That's the Tyranids in a nutshell. So today's viewer recommended video. Dominique36127 once again provided a recommendation to head back over to Arbiter Ian. So we're visiting Arbiter Ian with Jurassic Park, but 40K the ANPHELION Project in 25 minutes. So this is supposed to help me out more with the Tyranids and get a little bit more clarity into this group. I'm hoping I could get a good chunk of research out of it, because not knowing that there's no specific characters or gods or something. I don't know if there's gods. I hope they're gods. No, they're probably no gods, right? I mean, they're just insects. There should be an insect god. Anyway, the point I'm saying is, we're gonna keep on going with the research with as much information we could squeeze out of the Tyranids, and hopefully it'll be enough, to get a good chunk of knowledge out of it before moving on to the next group, next faction. So, yeah, let's get it on. Call to action, comment, like, subscribe, follow, and hit the notification bell. And let's begin the research.
Hi gang, deep in the jungles of Beta ANPHELION 4, a conspiracy is underway. The Imperial
Where's my tinfoil hat?
Force investigates an isolated research station, unaware that they're being hunted by Tyranids with the scariest evolutionary adaptation known to man. Yep. Wings. Yeah,
oh,
doesn't seem as scary anymore, but let's look at the ANPHELION Project.
Let me guess, they attach wings to them.
Imperial Armor 4, the ANPHELION Project, was a campaign supplement for Warhammer 40k released in December 2006 by Forge World. Like the previous Imperial Armor book, the Taros campaign, video just up there. This was a narrative campaign supplement detailing a single event in the Imperium's long and bloody history, but unlike Taros and the books that came after it, the ANPHELION Project was less about a war and more about a single mission. Written by Warwick Kimray, the ANPHELION Project told the story of an elite strike force investigating a loss of contact with an isolated Imperial research station over a period of about 4 days. The story is told in minute detail, almost an hour-by-hour account, related through conventional narration, but also pieced together from recovered maps, after-action reports, and secret intercepted transmissions, which gives it a really atmospheric feel. It's a really tense story with elements of loads of classic storytelling tropes, hovering somewhere between Predator, Jurassic Park, and Alien, with its mix of horrifying jungle warfare against alien monsters and tense sweeps of abandoned installations. Of course, like all these Imperial Armor books, it was really an excuse to showcase the latest range of Forge World giant Tyranid models. What are now classics got their first look in here,
I see what he
Trigon
means.
to the barbed and scythed Herodule, and
Let's start. Hold on a second. Let me look at these designs. I see what he means when he says like it's like the has that aliens aesthetic to it. That's that aliens theme. That's a freaking xenomorph on the left there. That's a xenomorph on the left. Don't even have to paint it. You could just go full on lazy and not paint that. Yeah, I totally see what where he's coming from. Okay, and there's the winged one up on the top that he's going to this story's going to cover. Yeah. Okay. Now, I like that it's centralized too so far. So, very excited to find out what this project was all about.
massive Harridan. This was even the first outing in model form for winged hive tyrants and flying Tyranid warriors, here named Shrikes. Many of the models in this supplement would later just become normal things for Codex Tyranid's armies to include, but back in 2006 the idea of flying Tyranid armies was pretty new, and therefore it plays quite an important part in the plot of this book. On the Imperial side, this was an excuse to feature some of Forge World's existing ranges. The Elysian drop troops from the Taros campaign were back in the form of the elite
humans.
B-99.
Not in
the
giant
Red
armors.
Scorpions made another appearance, and there were a few small additions like the Cadian Hostile Environment upgrade set, or Inquisitor Solomon Locke and his retinue. But really, this was all about the Tyranid models, and of course, the ANPHELION base itself, which was available at a colossal cost as a Forge World Red-In scenery kit. Good luck ever getting the mold release off that. Wow. If only it was 2006 again. The book was refreshed for a second edition in 2014, which updated the graphic design and tidied up some loose ends in the plot, so it's that version I'll mostly be working from in this video. If you want to read it yourself in way more detail, it's available on the Warhammer Plus Vault. The ANPHELION Project was cloaked in secrecy from the beginning. At the start of 850 M41, the following message was dispatched from the Lord Inquisitor Varius of the Ordo Hereticus to Inquisitor Solomon Locke. As of 8071 850 M41, routine astropathic communications with the research facility on Beta Amphelion 4 were broken off mid-transmission. Repeated efforts to re-establish contact with the facility's command complex have failed. It is a matter of some urgency that contact is restored, and to this end, an investigation team is to be assembled under your command and dispatched to the ANPHELION system in order that this message be investigated and reported. Lord Inquisitor Varius had been active in the area for some time, at the forefront of research against the continuing threat of the Tyranids. It had been almost 100 years since the First Tyrannic War, the incursion into Imperial space of Hive Fleet Behemoth. But smaller incursions had continued, and splinter fleets from the original invasion were still active, hiding out in the void between stars and descending on nearby worlds. As such, he was in a position to requisition serious backup for this investigation. Locke was travelling in the company of the Cadian 266th Regiment and had been assigned an Exploritas team from the Adeptus Mechanicus, led by Magos biologist Arthon. as well as an elite veteran unit of the Elysian drop troops, Detachment D99. D99 were a specialist inquisitorial unit, originally composed of the surviving members of the 99th Elysian Drop Regiment. After seeing service against the Tyranids at Molech, Haman's World, and Moran, the regiment had caught the eye of Lord Varius and were inducted into an experimental Inquisition-run program to create soldiers more suited to the war against the Xenos. In a series of experimental surgeries already field-tested on the Lostock 23rd, the survivors of the 99th had been gene-altered. The Elysians underwent an extensive series of excruciating modifications to make them more resistant to pain and to Xenos pathogens, as well as implanting new glands to stimulate periods of hyperaggression as a threat response. All intended to make them superior soldiers when pitted against the Tyranids. The mission to ANPHELION would be Detachment D99's first action post-modification. But it's testament to the resources available to the Inquisitor Lord that D99 weren't the most elite unit attached to the mission. Once in system, Locke would be joined by a strike cruiser from the Red Scorpions Astartes chapter, under the command of the then Commander Karab Cullen. How much of all the backstory to this was known to Locke is unclear. His orders were certainly more general in tone. The base at Beta ANPHELION 4 was suspected of conducting unsanctioned, potentially heretical research, and the environment was to be considered extremely hostile.
Okay, let me read some of this out just real quickly. Let's see. Transmitted, classified. I like that it's in documentation form. Let me know in the comments if this is I'm assuming it's a campaign, but is this something that I can read like a book and I'll still get a beginning, middle, and end? I would be interested in scooping this up and going through that. Same for the orcs. Anything like this for the orcs, I wouldn't mind. Let's see, sort of new orders confirmed. This communique is by request of further information regarding the nature of the threat on Beta ANPHELION 4. Your orders refer to the potentially high-risk nature of this mission and that dangerous and unsanctioned research have been taking place on Beta ANPHELION 4, but do not illuminate any further as to exactly what these entail. I must request further information so that the nature of the threat I am to encounter is clear to me and I could plan to combat it accordingly. I can only assume that by the inclusion of the Adeptus Astartes strike force, the threat rating is extreme. I will proceed on the basis of the current mission briefing until I receive your response. Inquisitor Solomon Locke. Okay. Wow. Alright. Xenos department. So they got the mission. Got it. Because of the Tyranids. They don't know what went down there. So that means that they knew there was a Tyranid thing. All right.
Land, investigate the lack of communication, retrieve any evidence of heretical research, and return it into inquisitorial hands. The ship assigned for the mission, the Cephistus, arrived at ANPHELION in 194850 M41 and started its long journey in system, linking up with the Red Scorpions on the way. The site of the research station was Beta ANPHELION 4, the fourth moon of the gas giant Beta ANPHELION, which was the second planet around ANPHELION. The moon was small and cold and covered with lakes of liquid ammonia, which had led to a jungle-like ecosystem of ammonia-based flora and a high concentration of ammonia in the otherwise breathable atmosphere. Troops were being deployed with breathing equipment in case the levels got too high. Incomplete records of the base indicated a central control complex with satellite laboratories stationed across the moon and containment areas delineated by force field fences to house their experiments. Locke submitted the first progress report as they were inbound at 194850. Attempted contact with the base control center hadn't received a response. Maybe the base was deserted or the occupants turned renegade. The plan was for the Red Scorpions to make their initial deployment into the control center, and their Terminator squads had begun preparations for the mission. Once a landing zone had been made safe, they'd be followed by the Inquisitor and his aides, then Detachment D99, and finally the Magos and the Cadians.
Okay, so they got a good plan.
The Cephistus would return to high orbit to await extraction orders, which Locke confidently predicted would be 2 days after deployment. All was on schedule. Which reminds me, we're going through this whole report by the imperial date. If you're not familiar with imperial dating, then this part is the year, And this part is the year fraction, which is what's mostly used here. A standard year split down into 1,000 segments. For our purposes, each time this number goes up 1, that's about 8 hours of real time. If you want to know more, again, there's a whole video on it here.
All right, we're going to have to research the dates.
8:50, 32 hours later, the deployment began with the Red Scorpion's Terminators landing on what initially seemed to be a deserted control center. No signs of life were found on the Auspex, and all containment fences were down. The 3 Terminator squads, led by Cullen, spread out, cutting their way into the sealed buildings with chain fists and charges, but the base was empty. Central power was off, though Terminator Squad Realm found signs of combat in one of the outbuildings. Locke's team and the Mechanicus forces deployed directly to the command center a few hours later, his progress report noting that the jungle seemed unhealthy and grey, in some areas decaying. The team split up, searching for maps of the base and interrogating the command center's data core. It took a little while, but by 200 850, the task force had a better picture of the events compiled by the Magos. Since the first incursion in 745, the Ordo Xenos had considered the Tyranids a growing threat and had established a number of research bases to study captured bioforms in a controlled environment in an attempt to manufacture anti-Tyranid weapons.
Wow, hold on a second. So that was the whole point of the facility. The point was to create anti-Tyranid weapons. That makes sense. Okay. You know what? That's actually pretty good in writing. That's pretty good in writing, because sometimes, when you got a facility, it's always genetically making creatures. Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, we're looking at you. Okay, especially you, Jurassic World. You kind of took that a little too crazy on that with the we have a dino child, the dinosaur human. Here they're just trying to make weapons. The threat of Tyranid hive fleets have been continually growing. Losses have been extreme, and the demand for manpower has strained even the Departamento Monitorum's vast resources in affected regions. Projections indicate that such heavy losses are unsustainable in the long term. While the Tyranids may be halted, the indirect effect of the Imperium's rule in other segments could be disastrous. More efficient ways of defeating the Tyranid threat needed to be sought, and an ANPHELION base was set up to investigate possible solutions. A series of covert inquisitorial research facilities were established to study Tyranid genetic material and the race's superior evolutionary traits in a controlled environment. Ways of interfering in the Tyranid's ability to rapidly evolve, adapt, and overcome new threats have been sought, with experiments leading to new anti-Tyranid biological weapons technology. The first successful outcome was the development of mutagenic acids, now deployed in Hellfire bolter rounds by Adeptus Astartes. Oh, so they got one successful weapon out of all that. Okay, so then it was it's not all for nothing. Large part of the service. Okay, we got the important part here.
Environment in an attempt to manufacture anti-Tyranid weapons. Early successes of this program had included the mutagenic acid rounds used by the Death Watch. The base on Beta Amphileum 4 was just one of these research stations. The entire site, covering a large part of the moon, was divided into 3 main containment zones: Alpha, Beta, and Omega, and 3 laboratories, Delta, Gamma, and Theta, along with spaced out generator emplacements. And at the middle of all this was the command center. No records existed of why the containment fences were down or the generators off, but
it's very simple. Nedry didn't get paid.
While the fences were off, they didn't appear to be damaged. They'd been powered down rather than destroyed. With the news of an imminent threat from escaped Tyranids, Locke started to issue his orders, but outside the base, the Xenos had already caught up with them. The Red Scorpion's Terminators guarding the perimeter started to receive Auspex pings inbound from within the jungle, and with little warning, waves of Gene Stealers leapt from the decaying plant matter. All 3 squads opened fire as they reported contact, assault cannons and storm bolters blazing as they slowly
That's scary.
fell
Look
back
at those
to guard the
Tyranids.
entrances to the base. Gene Stealers were cut down in their tens, but not all the Terminators could disengage in time. Squad Realm were trailing as the bioforms forced their way inside the defences, killing Sergeant Realm and another of his battle brothers before suddenly the assault ceased and the jungle was quiet once more. With the severity of the threat clear, the entire task force started deployment. The priority was the containment fences. Detachment D99, hastily erecting makeshift landing fields near the command center, would fly missions out to each generator complex to bring them back online, as the rest of the Red Scorpions task force deployed to the command
I like
center
this
to
map,
hold the
how he's
line.
doing it.
Once the power had been restored, the Red Scorpions Terminator squads would clear each laboratory in turn, deploying by Thunderhawk to each one and then moving on, and as each lab was cleared, it would be garrisoned by a follow-up convoy of Cadians travelling overground by Chimera, and the Majos' team could then work through the data core of each one, recovering all the data. Estimated time for the convoy to travel and retrieve data from each lab was 8 hours, and so within 24 hours, the mission should be complete. And as the task force prepared, they received a return message from Lord Varius. A battle cruiser had been dispatched, ready to enact Exterminatus on the moon as soon as Locke's forces were clear. By this point, D99 had already started their deployment to the generator sites. At Site 4, the G-modified Elysians rappelled down from hovering Valkyries, fanning out around the squat generator housings as supporting sentinels dropped in via grav chute. As the Valkyries removed to holding positions, a heavily armed Vulture gunship deployed Lieutenant Jurev's command squad, accompanied by a specially tasked tech servitor. But as the command squad stepped off the ramp, the second wave of attacks began. The first Jurev knew about the attack was a sudden, penetrating scream that echoed off the trees and through the vines, and then slowly died in a strangled gurgle. At all 4 generator sites, the perimeter suddenly came alive with chittering gaunts and gene stealers, as if they'd been lying in wait.
They were like the velociraptors.
Promethium spilling from flamers as their front ranks were felled by flesh borer rounds or chopped to pieces by Tyranid claws. Confusion soon reigned, troopers seeing shadows in the undergrowth before each attack, until their vultures could get airborne again and the nearest foliage was shredded by Punisher rounds. D99 had seen this all before, but there was no falling back. At Generator 4, Jurev's command squad deployed las cutters to break into the generator housing. Stab beams from flashlights played out across the sparking interior as the squad deployed, though the first men were cut down immediately by a lictor lurking in the darkness.
Wow, look at
Jurev
that!
threw himself to the side as his special weapons trooper took aim and dispatched the monster with a melter gun shot, and as the platoon outside fought off the Tyranids, the servitors set to work. By 2:01, Locke's ongoing reports transmitted that despite heavy losses, Detachment D99 had succeeded in raising the containment fences and the mission had proceeded as planned. Commander Cullen and his Terminators had seen heavy resistance but had cleared Lab Delta, and the Cadian 4th Company had departed alongside the Majos biologists to garrison and retrieve the data, burning their way through the jungle with heavy flamers. But before he left for the lab, Arthon had been able to piece together the timeline of the original breakout. Initial experiments had proceeded to plan, but the Tyranid specimens expanded at a far faster rate than expected.
Oh, they multiplied. They multiplied and they didn't expect that. Oh, dang. Wait, they multiplied? Oh, I think I misunderstood that. Oh, well, you'll correct me. Everyone will correct me. It seems that the project on beta ANPHELION 4 has been successful initially, at least within the containment areas the Tyranids had been allowed to develop, and a few experimental samples had been released and observed. What had then happened within the containment areas had surprised all present. From only a few initial organisms, their numbers soon started to multiply. Yeah, I did hear that right. Oh, God. And their racial strains began to diversify with astounding speed, but only interrelated genus. Even the local flora had been affected, exhibiting alarming new features such as poisonous spines and accelerated growth. A containment area, Alpha, the vines grew with such speed around the containment fence generations that they had to be culled with flamers to prevent damage. So they didn't just multiply. Am I reading this correctly? Am I understanding this correctly? They didn't just multiply amongst themselves, but they also altered the environment with their own genes. They basically terraformed and made the environment work with them and work for them against the people. Oh, that's amazing. That's an amazing characteristic. I like that characteristic that they can terraform. In addition to what this is like World of the World stuff, you know, the world with the red mist when when the Martians were trying to terraform Earth before before their fate, their eventual fate. The Tyranids does the same thing too. I'm very surprised, actually, because their initial design, the way that they're written and designed is that they're supposed to just eat everything, leave a whole planet of devastation, and then move on. Because that's what hit me in the head when they said that the local flora had been affected and exhibiting new features. I'm wondering if that's what they do. If that's what they do when they decide to stay behind on one planet after they destroyed it and you know, treat it as a base of operation.
Shortly after the start of the experiment, whole new bioforms were being seen that were never originally captured. And it wasn't just the familiar ambulatory type. Tyranid bioforms had infested the local fauna, jagged new plants growing frighteningly fast. Of the 3 containment areas, Zone Alpha was the most problematic. Faced with containment fences, the Tyranids have responded by evolving wings, and soon regular purges of Zone Alpha were being conducted to flame the Xenos back into submission. Zone Beta had been relatively quiet. The researchers suspecting the bioforms deposited there had gone into hibernation. It was in Zone Omega, near Lab Gamma, that the collapse started. The containment fence failed with no warning, and soon Lab Gamma was overrun by a range of Tyranid bioforms as the rest of the network went down one fence at a time. But despite the new detail, what was returned to Locke was little more than an out-of-office auto-reply. Lord Varius would of course deal with the matter urgently upon his return. By 202, Cullen and his Terminators had moved on to the complex at Lab Theta, while the Cadian 4th and Magos Arthos had set to work at Delta. At Theta, Cullen initially suspected the complex to be deserted, the 3 Terminator squads advancing through the echoing corridors and into the abandoned lab rooms, swimming with the liquid from broken specimen jars. That was until gene stealers erupted from the floors, pushing grating panels aside to engage the Terminators up close. Sergeant Darak had to be flamed by his own heavy flamer carrier to burn the Xenos off of him, but the Terminators eventually managed to succeed in clearing the complex. Meanwhile, 4th Company had deployed around Delta, safe behind containment fences, when, from somewhere in the darkness, they heard a shriek, and pouring over the fence came swarms of gargoyles, shrikes, and finally a flying hive tyrant. Flares were launched, the Cadian Sabre defense platform searchlights lit up the sky, and the troopers opened fire as they fell back to the lab, but the swarm had come over every
that's big.
At once and were behind them too. The last thing the commanding Captain Ryzek saw was a Xenos beetle burrowing into his chest as the 4th Company were overrun. It was over so quickly, Magos biologist Arthos, salvaging data from the lab cogitators, barely realised the 4th were falling back before he was chopped clean in half by a shrike. Inquisitor Locke and Colonel Shakir tried to raise the 4th Company and biologist Arthon to find out what was happening, but the Voxnet was a jumble of garbled cries for help.
Dang.
Locke sent another urgent report. The 4th were gone. The evolution of the Tyranids meant their only defences were useless. By this point, all 3 labs had been cleared, the Cadians deployed, and Locke recalled the Red Scorpions to the command centre in case of attack. They would try and collect more information as long as they could, until evacuation became the only option. Again, no response was received. At 203, the command complex itself finally came under attack. With the ammonia levels in the air rising and the defenders watching the skies, the men of Detachment D99 stationed there were caught off guard when the first attack came from below. In the middle of the defense lines, the ground collapsed and swarms of Raveners emerged.
They just love to come out from under the ground, huh?
The Elysians fell back to planned defensive positions, holding off the Raveners with las fire and sentry guns, but the attack was a feint. Inside the control room itself, the floor buckled and then exploded as a Trigon forced its way into the complex, tearing about with abandon, smashing the Auspex and control
Can they come from above the ceiling?
With a wave
like
of
crash through
pressure,
the ceiling?
the containment fences once again came down. But as D99 prepared to fight back the next wave, explosions blossomed on the other side of the command zone as 2 Harridans descended on the undermanned landing fields. Bioplasma rained down on D99's Valkyries and Vulture gunships, and though the autocannon emplacements eventually found their range, bringing down one of the massive creatures on top of more Imperial flyers, the landing fields were in ruin. There would be nowhere near enough aircraft left for D99 to effect a quick extraction. Inquisitor Locke ordered a full regroup, everyone back to the command complex to rescue whatever they could, but things continued to go badly. Back at Lab Theta, Cullen had finished his search and destroy mission, but with the biologist gone, much of their work was now for nothing. They boarded their Thunderhawk for the recall, but as they ascended above the cloud cover, they were mobbed by thousands of spore mines floating.
What the heck are those?
Its engines clogged with ichor and biomatter. The Thunderhawk
Crackdook
carrying
didn't mention anything about that.
Scorpions went down somewhere in the depths of containment area Omega. Inquisitor Locke watched from the base as the transponder signal failed, but there was nothing he could do. In his estimation, there was no time left to mount a rescue mission, but that was not an opinion shared by the Red Scorpions defending the control center. Led by Apothecary Ryle, the remaining Space Marines pulled back from the defense lines and mounted up, a convoy of Razorbacks and Rhinos forcing their way into the jungle, their engines drowning out the protests of the Inquisitor. Locke let the Space Marines go, but not without a final warning. You and your chapter have not heard the last of this insubordination. Somewhere in containment area Omega, the surviving Red Scorpions fought their way clear of the wreckage of the downed Thunderhawk. Chain fists cut the Dreadnought, Brother Halar, from its compartment. Around them were decaying trees mixed with the first small spore chimneys as the Tyranids started their breakdown of plant life. There were 15 Space Marines and 1 Dreadnought left to organise a defence, with no communications and with the shadows of bioorganisms flitting through the darkness. Shortly, the first probing attacks came.
Yo, what the heck is this? Man, the Tyranid designs are getting more and more elaborate and frightening. This thing is a walking spider with baby Tyranids oozing out of its body. My God, this is how the heck are these guys even handling it mentally? You know, looking at this horror here, I'll probably be the first one gobbled up, quite honestly. Oh dang. I would not want to be out there facing this thing. This is fantastic design. Is there a model of this? Look at this. Look at the appendages. Then it's got the long claws there. And then all of a sudden it gives birth to these creatures all at the same time. Dang.
And then larger waves. Tyranids and the like being swept clear by the heavy flamers of the Terminator squad, but soon a pitched battle had emerged. Brother Halar waded into the waves of Gaunts, crushing them under his feet, but found himself in mortal combat with a huge Carnifex, which ripped his Inferno cannon from its mount in an explosion of promethium. Commander Cullen, fighting off waves of smaller bioforms, tried to reach the rest of his command, but the comms were silent as, across the wreckage of the Thunderhawk, Brother Halar and his foe sunk into the swamp, both dead. Around this time, Locke submitted another report. As far as he was concerned,
they were sent to the slaughter.
Cullen was lost, the Red Scorpions had abandoned him, the Cadians out of communication, and D99 without their flyers. And, attempting extraction, he'd been informed that the Hephaestus had received new orders and was now on its way out of the system. This time, he received a reply. It is with deep regret I must inform you that the reinforcements I had ordered to your aid have had to be recalled as a matter of utmost urgency.
Wow.
For whatever reason, Lord Varius had abandoned him here.
No one is
There was
innocent.
to be no rescue. The only ship in system belonged to the Red Scorpions. By 2:06, surveyor readings near the command centre were off the scale.
Oh,
Locke knew
checkmate.
what was coming. He heard the first shots from outside as the attack began. Wave after wave of Gaunts assaulted the position. Locke and his command squad joined D-99 and the remainder of the Cadians at the perimeter as the waves kept coming. Elysians were dissolved around him by gobbets of bioacid. A counterattack by the Cadians' Hellhounds was cut short when a barbed Hierodual smashed its way through the tanks and then turned on Locke and his retinue. But as the Inquisitor was about to make his peace with the Emperor, a las cannon beam downed the giant bioform as the Red Scorpion's Razorbacks thundered in from the jungle. Heavy bolter rounds spraying around, the attack was pushed back, but more would come. Locke ordered the Astartes to prepare for the next wave, but the Cephestus wasn't the only one that had received new orders. Cullen rounded on the Inquisitor. My orders are to evacuate the moon's surface. The situation here means my priorities have changed. My men are no longer at your command. We are not expendable.
Hey, Cullen's
assets.
awesome.
Locke raged. Officially, he was in command of the mission, and the Red Scorpions were now his only way off-world. But Cullen wouldn't be swayed. Your mission is irrelevant, Cullen declared, and turned and walked up the ramp. Powerless to intervene, Locke watched as the nose ramp slammed closed, and the gunship's engine pitch rose. The Thunderhawk lifted off, the engines boomed, and it rocketed skyward.
Wait, they left Locke behind?
Soon out of sight. Inquisitor Solomon Locke
Oh.
one final report at 2:07 850 M41. With the battle raging and the silhouettes of Bio-Titans approaching through the ammonia fog,
Bio-Titans?
he signed off with one final line: death to the Xenos. And with that, the mission to Beta Amphileon 4 was over, but it wasn't quite the end of the story. Inquisitorial agents intercepted this message from Varius to unknown associates after the termination of the mission. The completion of my latest operation on Beta Amphileon 4 signals the end of this experimental phase.
Wow,
of the
so
Amphelion
this is an
project.
ongoing...
Varius had engineered the situation from the start. The Amphelion project, though it had yielded early results, had failed at all stations. He'd ordered the sabotage of defences and deployed D-99, the Red Scorpions and Locke to the planet as a test for the next step of his war against the Xenos. The events at Beta Amphileon 4 had proven to him that the gene program started with D-99 should be expanded across the sector, shown the particular resilience of the Red Scorpions chapter. He was petitioning for a founding of 3 chapters to be created from their gene seed, and also rid him of a potential rival in the form of,
Of course.
Puritan Solomon Locke. With
Oh, it's got to be political, right? Oh my gosh. So basically, he's trying to get rid okay, so it wasn't so much about experimenting on the Tyranids themselves insofar as to find use the genetically modified human soldiers to see how they can handle the Tyranids and how well and the resiliency of the Red Scorpion. So he's going to make more superhumans. So he's more fixated on superhumans than okay. In addition to making certain weapons, he's really creating superhumans specifically for fighting Tyranids. Yo, and then he gets rid of Locke in the process.
these goals achieved, Exterminatus was finally ordered. This made intriguing reading for the agents of the inquisitorial representative to the High Lords. Obviously, Inquisitor Lord Varius was a heretic of some sort, and instructions were given to place him under investigation, to prepare his death warrant, and to inform the Calidus Temple of a potential mission, but the inaction of these orders was to be held for the moment. Lord Varius's unsound methods represent a threat to the stability of the Emperor's rule, and can only be tolerated while he continues to produce excellent results against the Tyranid hive fleets. Varius's days were numbered as soon as he stopped being so useful. And that is the end of the ANPHELION Project. Less a mission and more of a conspiracy within the Inquisition itself. I quite like this sort of story. We get the full mission in all of its Space Hulk meets Jurassic Park detail, and we get to see how fractured and backstabbing life in the Inquisition really is. The lab on Beta Amphelion 4 was a big endeavour, and there were others scattered across the sector, and genetic engineering programs run on indentured guard regiments, and all this was unknown to the wider Inquisition, just the personal project of one Lord Inquisitor. What was the end result? We don't know. There is the occasional mention of Beta Amphelion in later supplements, mentioned as an official failure, but we don't know if the project as a whole bore any fruit, or if there ever was that new founding, or how long Varius survived to enact any of his plans before getting Calidus to death. The whole affair is one more drop in the ocean, a footnote in the history of the Imperium. Thanks for watching.
I need to know if I can read Imperial Armor Volume 4 without the need of playing the game. Like, I don't need to actually play the game with that book. I'm not sure if that's a game book. I think I misunderstood. I think I might be misunderstanding. But if I could read that without playing the game, the campaign, I want to get my hands on that. That's a very fascinating approach to what they did in the story and the lore with the Tyranids. From what I gathered, though, it's all documentations and such, and that's pretty interesting to take a look at. An interesting read to see how they did it. I gotta say, this was a very fantastic, run-of-the-mill, your run-of-the-mill complex compound, Jurassic Park kind of thing, which then turns into Starship Troopers. If you see the movie Starship Troopers, when they got to that compound, it was completely overrun with bugs, from Clendathan bugs, and they're trying to shoot them down while waiting for a dropship to arrive to evacuate them. That's what it turned into. But what's also great is, like he said, gives you a good look at the Inquisition specifically and exactly how they operate and everything, as opposed to your run-of-the-mill, commando story. I'm assuming there's a lot of those. But that really gave me a good insight into the Imperium as well. That even though that they're not mindless, we're gonna shoot everything. Cullen proved to be of rational mind and saying, "Hey, we're not going to sacrifice ourselves like that." In that manner. And of course, the Imperium itself is like, we're a-holes, but we're not that a-holes. We don't know what you're planning, Various. We're gonna let us. We're gonna turn. We're just gonna pile on the tab. We're gonna create the IOU receipts. We're just gonna keep adding on the IOU receipts, and we'll cash out when we're done with you. That is a very, very frightening fate. And the fact that there may be more of these facilities out there is crazy. And to think that it wasn't even about it was about countering these insane mother brain looking things. How you say, it's not very clear as to what Lord Varus's plan truly was, but the fact that he seems like he wants to stop the Tyranids. He wants to stop the Tyranids, but he's going about it in a very unusual way that the Imperium doesn't like. Like, it's not following the order. It's not following the order of things. And so he's kind of like being unorthodox. But the fact that he was willing to sacrifice soldiers for this experiment, I believe, if I understand correctly, I'll have to read the book. I gotta definitely get my hands on the book to get the full story. But from what I'm understanding, what Arbitor Ian is saying is that Varius is doing genetics on humans, and he's creating a scenario in these compounds, where the Tyranids are being experimented. Now, the people who are there in the compound are thinking that they're just doing a standard Imperium order to experiment on the Tyranids, find out how to counter. They were successful in creating one such weapon to counter the Tyranids, but in the process, Varius on the sly is actually creating a scenario for his experiments, which is genetically enhanced humans who are genetically enhanced with Tyranid Tyranid genes and such to make them basically Tyranids. You know, saying a human Tyranid hybrid, but with the mentality of the human to fight back on the Tyranids with no problem. Why, I don't know. What I do know is that they didn't like it. They didn't like it one bit, and they got their eyes on him. They're like, yeah, you can keep going. We're just gonna add to the IOU. We're gonna catch out soon enough. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool. That's pretty cool, and that really gave me a good idea of the Inquisitors with the humans, among the humans, that they could be just as deceptive and how you say, motivated. You know what I'm saying? That the Imperium is not this a flat two-dimensional all hail the Emperor, you know, God Emperor type of thing. That everyone's got they got their motives. You got some who are rational, like Cullen. You know, he's like, yeah, I serve the Emperor, but I'm not giving my men up on a stupid thing like this type of thing. You know what I mean? There is rationale. I actually like the story because it's showing me that the Imperium is not mindless, you know, muscle headed, you know what I mean, or that they're just inherently 100% cannon fodder, you know, for the cult like cannon fodder, that they know when to pull back, you know what I'm saying, that the humans know when to pull back and fight another day, you know what I'm saying, not give up on something frivolous. You know, saying like they're, you know, if it's not in their core structure, which is to the God Emperor and so on, if it's not to him, which is that they feel is a mark of honor, they're not going to go through with it, and that's what Various didn't understand, you know, because apparently the Inquisitors don't understand. Eventually, I'll get to the humans. They're dead last. They're dead last in the research. So yeah, everything about this campaign and the story behind it is actually pretty solid. You know, they had a very nice strategy, very nice plan. The fact that the Tyranids got more and more frightening and coming out like this is just very inventive. The fact that they even terraform, and I'm very surprised that was not leaned into. You know, I'm surprised that wasn't leaned into from the preliminary research. That it wasn't noted that the Tyranids would terraform. If they're not having them terraforming, I'm disappointed, because that's actually really brilliant. Instead of just, you know, destroying and moving on, they're actually terraforming, like in War of the Worlds. And they have successful terraforms. I wouldn't understand why. I don't understand why they wouldn't even do that. You know, terraform to create even more Tyranids. I guess that's why they don't want to do it. Because then they would overrun the entire universe within a matter of seconds. Honestly, I would have done it. You know, I would have done it. I would have gone for it. You can't. Yeah, you don't want to come up with something like that, because then you have to pull the trigger on it. You know what I'm saying? You can't make a Chekhov's gun like that. Then you gotta follow through on that and destroy half the universe, if not the whole of the universe. Especially if they're supposed to be mindless, you know, hive mind machines with one task. Still, I would have pulled the trigger and made them terraform. It doesn't have to be a fast terraform either. Could have been a slow terraform, and you could have had plenty of stories with where all the factions, you know, go to the planet to stop them from growing out and everything, or throw an orc down there and let them grow out. have two bioorganic factions, you know, just terraforming, they'll, you know, try to out terraform each other, more start planting more orc seeds, while the Tyranids is like transform more plants. Oh my gosh. So yeah, this was pretty good. The ANPHELION Project, again, do I need I just want to, I'm very interested in the book itself, because I doubt I'm going to ever get get the pieces for the game. I doubt I'm ever going to be able to get to do that. I'm sure there's somebody who actually has the actual board pieces. If I wanted to do that, and, if I were able to get the orc figurines, just be like, here's my orcs. Let's go to ANPHELION. That's not how the campaign works. It's the orcs. I will we counter the Tyranids with a wog. Oh man, what else? Oh yes, and I do want to do research on the dates, on the dating system, how the date system works. I think that's really important, so that way I can be able to understand when I go through the lore, I know what time period. I have a good idea of the time period. That's probably going to be a whole study in itself. Ooh, wow. All right, so good job, Arbiter Ian, and big thanks to Dominique36127 for the recommendation. Head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book down in the description below, along with links to the other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel, and you do a YouTube video on it, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it. And if you're interested, you can join me in my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Where I do lore research, cultural studies, gaming, and more. Look forward to hanging out with you. So, until the next Warhammer research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night. Buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.